I chose this topic for a minute and then we will start. Uh, my basic belief, and because I'm talking to a group of doctors, so I think this will, despite being a post-lunch session, the word theory will not really put you to sleep. I believe, like some colleagues of mine, or maybe all colleagues of mine, that theory is very, very practical in managing anything that we do. So I thought that I should share some ideas about a very important theory with the participants. And secondly, the reason I choose this justice as a topic to discuss with you, because according to my understanding of whatever people have found in my area, in case someone is demotivated, someone is not doing what he or she is capable of doing, but is withholding the effort, then the major reason could be that he or she is feeling that I was not justly or fairly treated at the workplace. So given that, I thought I should share the findings about justice, and if time permits, the idea or the skill which I want to spend time on, in case some time is left, is listening. Let's see how it goes. Now just one final thing before we start. I don't think that the knowledge of organizational behavior is as perfect as your science is. We have some ideas, they work sometimes, but I don't think they work universally. So whatever I'm going to share with you, in case you find that not working in your context, I'm giving to understand that most of you are independent practitioners, or maybe some of you are also working in hospitals. So if you find that something is not really fitting my understanding of what people do, raise your hand, we will discuss that till the time we have sessions time. Now, this fundamental theory or model that I want to share with you is this. So in this model or theory, this was given by, I'll also mention the name of the people who have given these ideas. This was given by Kurt Lewin. Now, I'll firstly explain this and then we will talk about some implications of what this theory says. So this theory basically says that human behavior, this session is about managing people and teams, which ultimately pertains to managing human behavior. So human behavior is a function of two broad categories of forces or drivers or factors which impact human behavior. One force or one category of force is the individual himself or herself, person, P is for person. And the second category of forces is the environment, E is for environment, things which are outside the individual. So whatever Rajiv is doing since 2:30 in the afternoon or 1:30 in the afternoon, or whatever any other person in this room has been doing or is doing, according to this theory, that will be due to two broad forces. One is the person himself or herself, and the second is the circumstances which are outside the control of the individual. The first thing which I want you to do is to examine the veracity of this idea. Do you think this roughly captures what human beings do? The behavior is driven by the person and the circumstances. Does that ring true according to you? Yes. Anything that is missing in the equation?
So what is B and E?
B is behavior.
B and E?
B is person. And E is environment, circumstances.
Conditioning.
So that will be in the individual himself or herself. If someone is in your field, let's say, more well trained in a particular disease, then he or she will behave better than we should. Yeah.
Conditioning.
Conditioning would be reflected within the individual. So, can I assume that by and large the audience is in sync with this idea that behavior is due to these two broad factors? Is that all right? Personality would be within the individual. Now, next 5 to 10 minutes on unpacking this P and E, and then I'll talk about at least two implications of this. So, what all are the things that we discussed? Two of them, I believe, like personality and past training, let's say, or conditioning. So, what all do you think goes into the individual which drives the behavior of that individual in the workplace, wherever you are working? What all are those things that you want to take care of while looking at the individual?
Knowledge.
Knowledge would be one, right? Knowledge.
Skills.
Skill.
I'm kind of putting a slash here, so both of them refer to roughly the same thing for me right now. Knowledge, skill, anything else that
Ability.
behavior is the outcome.
Discipline.
Discipline, let's say attitude, temperament.
Motivation.
I think I can also put personality, and training would be reflected in the knowledge and skill that you have. Personality. Anything else that is important according to you, but we are missing that right now in listing that on the board?
Loyalty.
Sorry?
Loyalty.
Loyalty. Yeah, so that would be within the attitude. Some people are-
EQ.
Huh?
EQ.
Within the individual's personality. Huh?
Aspiration.
Okay, yeah, health is good. Health. So,
Aspiration.
huh?
Aspiration.
Aspirations, yeah. So all those things are basically drive not drive, that's a bad word. All those things comprise of the forces, factors inside the individual. You will see variation. I'm talking to a bunch of people who are technically quite skilled, so therefore I'm using some statistical language. You will see variation in that. I'm assuming 30 plus people would be in this room, right? Number of people? I'm using the number 30 because there is this idea that in case the number of people is 30, you can see this bell-shaped curve getting applied on some parameter. So let's say if I look at some aspect of personality, I'll use one example. There are 4 more that people have pointed out as very important, but I'll use one of them, which is very, very prominent in terms of guessing or capturing people's personality, which is extrovert versus introvert. Most likely in your past experience, you would have seen some people and your mind would have told this guy is a very extrovert person, is that correct? Or this person is very introvert, is that correct? So now these things are distributed in the sense that if I take 30, 40, 50 a sample and then I measure through some psychometric instrument the extroversion or introversion of the individual, I think I can plot that and they will follow that normal distribution. Most likely, I'm not 100% sure about all of these things, but at least personality and attitude, these two, I do know is to some extent skill also, is normally distributed. So one thing is comprising of those factors. Individuals have some control over, let's say, health. In case I were to be more careful, then maybe this throat would be better, or maybe I'm making it up. So individuals have these things or some plus 5 other things also which drive their behavior. Can you identify some things in the E domain which lead to either E, for example, something in the environment which you think basically drives people's behavior?
Freedom of
Freedom given by the superior. Okay. Autonomy, what else?
Acknowledgement of the value of the person working.
So this is again something which is given to you from the environment, outside you. Okay.
reward.
Autonomy, recognition or reward, okay. What else?
Motivation.
This is inside. It will impact. Give it recognition. Anything else that comes to your mind?
Ethics of the organization.
Sorry?
Ethics.
Ethics of the organization. I'm using a different word here, or culture. If culture is of a type which signals to you that I should do my work religiously or conscientiously, you would expect many people to do that. If culture is of a different type, then that behavior will not be seen. Anything else that seems like very important?
The peers, the other people
Surrounding,
surrounding
peer group or
peer
something.
group.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is good enough for me to go to the next part. So, in the next part, what I wanted to do is to highlight one very, very important aspect of E, which has come to some extent in the things that we have listed as examples of E, which is the person that you report to. In case you are working in an organization, then chances are very, very high, unless you are the CEO, then also you are board member. So the person that any individual reports to, there is another strand of theory in our discipline which says that that person is a very, very important component of the environment for the subordinate. Do you find that true? There is a way to understand this, examine this, and then in case you find this right, then accept it. Suppose if I give you a fill in the blanks question, you're working for some hospital or organization, and I ask you to say, my organization is, I want you to use some adjective to describe the organization that you belong to. You will put something in that, good, bad, ugly, helpful, unhelpful, whatever. Now the theoretical insight, going deeper into this aspect of E, came in this form, colloquially put, that whatever you will put in that blank, fill in the blanks, my organization is ... whatever you will put there, 80% of that will be coming from your opinion about your supervisor. Is that correct? When I say I am Calcutta is good, 80% of that sentiment or opinion is coming from basically what I think about the person that I report. Now, in case that rings true, then there is a very important thing for us to notice in the next 2 3 minutes, which is that if I want better behavior from my subordinates, according to this equation, that can come in case I have a better subordinate, right? I have a person who is more skillful, who has better attitude, or personality, or whatever. The other is the E. Now, if for the subordinate I am the 80% of the E, then most likely I need to change my own self in order to get the better behavior. If I want B plus delta E, not minus delta B, and if I am the major factor in the E, then chances are that I need to put a delta plus delta in front of me to get better output from my subordinates. What do you think about that? Maybe I trapped you all into believing that, but you can attack this idea. Does that ring true? That if I am a better superior, then I am likely to get the better output from the same subordinate. Does that sound true?
True.
Okay. Now, can you point out 1 or 2 things that will make you a better superior vis-a-vis whoever you are supervising? What kind of things will come here?
Constantly is a subordinates.
In what way?
Their needs and aspirations.
Okay.
Leading from the front.
Sorry.
Leading from the front.
What does that look like?
Means he's the main guiding force of the total organization. Whatever he works, whatever he do better, that will be followed by the members of the organization.
Could happen. Could happen. Okay. So I'll go back to what you were saying, that if I have a better view of who my subordinates are, if I understand the individual a bit better, then chances are that I will be able to modulate my own interaction with that person, given a more accurate understanding of that individual. Now, in the list of things that we have here, again, there is another idea that within the person, you can note down 5, 10 more things also, but one aspect of theory is to try to parsimoniously organize a lot of variables. So a parsimonious organization tells that there are 2 broad categories of things that comprises of a person who is most likely reporting to you. The first is the technical skill or knowledge, something like this here. So if you are hiring a person, let's say for your hospital, then is he or she technically, medically qualified to do the job that I am going to assign to that person? So one is the technical aspect. And then the other is all this fuzzy attitude, personality, loyalty, devotion to work, all those things. So most likely there is no diploma or degree which will certify that yes, this individual has good loyalty or will continue to have good loyalty or something like that. Then the question arises that if I want to understand or have a better view of my subordinates, most likely for the technical part of the skill set or whatever this person brings to the job, I have prior vetting available. If someone has completed a very prestigious course, chances are that I can bet that this person is technically above average at least. Okay? But how do we figure out the non-technical part? And would I be right if I could put this for you to consider that basically technical things stop being the differentiating factor beyond a point. After, and that point is not very far, but the non-technical, the personality, the attitude, and all those soft factors, they in fact become quite important as you grow in the organization. Is that correct according to your understanding?
Yes.
Two people could be equally competent in terms of their qualification or experience, but one person, let's say, leads from the front, the other one does not, and the output after 1 or 2 years of these two people would be very, very different. So then the question is, how do we identify those non-technical factors which drive the behavior of a person? What does your mind tell you to say vis-a-vis this question? How do I identify that Arpita is, let's say, having the right personality type for the job which is going to be assigned to her, or Devamalia would have the wrong type of personality? How do I know that?
Past
What?
activity.
Sorry?
Past activity.
Past activity. So your observation of that individual's past. Okay. What if your observation is biased or idiosyncratic? Chances are that if you are the boss of 5 people, they are super nice while they talk to you. So basically you are seeing the good side of them, which is in response to the E that you have created. Behind your back, when you are not there, they may say some of the things. Did it happen?
Peer reviews.
Here, behavior with other
Here,
these are her colleagues.
okay. Yeah, not some, many companies have tried to do that. So I'm sure that most of you would have heard something like 360-degree feedback mechanism through which you get to know the mentality or those fuzzy, non-technical things of the individual. Here, according to this particular equation, something which can be helpful, I'll go back to the example of extroversion versus introversion. So, by the way, today I'm not going to discuss that, but there is this very interesting finding which says, again, verify this from your experience, that ceteris paribus or petrus paribus, there are these two, so everything else kept constant. If a person is extrovert, he or she is likely to, number one, emerge, number two, succeed also as a leader in any role. Is that correct from your experience? How do you describe an extrovert? What does extrovert do?
Social connect.
Sorry?
Make social connection.
Okay. Social connect meaning that he or she talks to some other people. What else?
The situation is cold, they can still pop out a conversation and make the situation very amicable.
And what do introverts do?
Introverts keep their feelings to themselves and maybe do not express well.
Avoid interactions.
Okay. Let me firstly go back to that statement. So is it true from, roughly speaking, not 100%, but when I say roughly 50+%, then that's a good thing. So a good amount, 50+% of your experience would be like, if a person is extrovert, he or she, number one, is seen as a natural leader, and number two, given the responsibility, and maybe because of the source of connection and whatever, this person also succeeds more in that role. Is that roughly correct according to your observation? Huh? Okay. Now, so then maybe while you are looking at a person to hire or promote, these are the two decisions that most people take, then you want to check for the extrovert versus introvert nature of the person. One route that you can adopt is to go to that person's history, figure out from peers, this or that. Let me build up an alternative idea.
Sir, an introvert, just interrupting, an introvert also need to understand for which job we are hiring the person. If it's for some research and development, the person needs to sit at a desk, then an introvert could also do better.
Okay, that could be true. That could be true. See, I'm not very sure that this will be like 60 or 70% true. The reason is that even in a very technical kind of role, when you are put in a position where you have a team reporting to you, then regardless of the technical or non-technical nature of the work, a human being has to interact with those 5, 7, 10 people plus the peers, and every job, every organization has political element. So being an introvert becomes a handicap in dealing with all those things. But one aspect where suppose if you assign me something solo and I'm by and large independent in completing the work, then introversion versus extroversion doesn't really matter. But even in the technical domain, there are roles which will require you to have some degree of extroversion. Okay, but I like these kind of questions because otherwise generally you will go and I will go with this idea that everything was alright. No, everything is not alright. So I'll give you two working definition of extroversion versus introversion, and then I'll dig deeper into. I talk about two implications of this now. The implication number one is coming. So let's say extroversion is basically defined as a quality or a feature inside an individual which gives the person more energy as he or she interacts with others. Very simple working definition. I'm an extrovert if I derive energy when I talk to others. An introvert is exactly the opposite. Whatever energy you have, if you talk to others, that energy is drained. Is that a good working definition according to you? You would have seen some extroverts, some of you would be extroverts, some of you would be introverts. So introverts, for example, suppose if there is a gathering after this program gets over, introverts would be shuddering at the thought of going there and again having to interact with 10 strangers. And extroverts would be saying, okay, we have party shuru hui hai," right? So extroverts get energy, introverts lose energy as they interact with them.
Sir, here is one thing.
Huh.
A person can also be like hybrid kind of thing.
Yes.
He may be extrovert to the subordinates, but very sort of introvert to the higher authority.
No. That I won't be able to say. So basically, let's say, by introvert, in your statement, what I see and correct or verify or reject this, that vis-a-vis the superior, the person is very quiet. Therefore, you are labeling that person as introvert.
He is not expressing his own ideas to the superior.
Quiet, silent type, right? So that is a behavior in response to the E. Because your mind is telling you in that interaction with the superior, if I make a mistake, superior will judge me wrongly. So therefore,
Extroverts sometimes are more shallow. They talk more.
I don't know if extroverts will find that odd, but I'm not getting into the technical, shallow refers to the technical aspect, right?
As a worker.
As a worker, technical knowledge or skills, those skill part. I'm not getting to that. I'm saying that two people are equally competent or equally skilled or skillful. One is extrovert, the other is introvert. You would have seen such pairs, right? Is that correct? Okay. Now, so I'm going to ask you a few quiz questions, very small, easy quiz questions. Have you seen in your experience, and something which is very, very useful in classes like this is to look at the verification done from total work experience in this room would be at least 200 years. If there are 25, 30 people right now in the room, into 10 roughly speaking. So examine these ideas with this fact that whatever is getting discussed here is getting verified with at least 150, 200 years of experience of having seen workplace human behavior. Now, let's say someone is a very, very extrovert person. Extroverts derive energy when they talk to others, and you see that extrovert in a very, very strong situation where if he or she does what he or she likes to do, which is to interact with people and derive energy through that, people would kind of negatively ostracize or rebuke or reprimand that person. I'll give you one example. I generally feel bad about that example, but it's a funeral. But you see an extrovert in that occasion, and you don't know whether this person is extrovert or introvert. You have a video recording available of that person's behavior for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Looking at the video recording, would you be able to say that this person is extrovert, or would you say this person is introvert? Huh?
May not be always reaction to that particular environment also.
In that kind of occasion, even if you're an extrovert, a person is an extrovert, what do you think he or she will do? Typically, he or she will be very, very quiet, right? So, can we say that therefore the environment is so demanding and compelling and so clear in the signal that it sends to you that it is subduing the personal element? The environment is very compelling, very, very demanding. Right now, lunch here is good, I assume. You are feeling sleepy, but because you are in a classroom, chances are that the E will keep you awake. The P wants to doze off, but the E is signaling to the person, no, don't do that. The siesta will happen tomorrow. So, people respond to environment. People respond. Opposite example, you can also verify. There is an introvert, and this introvert is with, let's say, some very close family members or very close friends. You don't know whether this person is introvert or extrovert. You have a video recording available of that person's behavior. Looking at that, would you label him or her as extrovert or introvert? No means what? Extrovert or introvert?
We can't assess. We can't assess.
You cannot assess. Someone said extrovert here.
No, so the environment is the factor that's
So this person is now with very close people. So do introverts generally remain silent in the company of very close people also?
No.
No, right? They would be like joking, laughing, tickling others, and they would be again deriving energy from that. So if you want to know the nature of the person, I want to repeat this, and I hope you also find this importance and worthwhile. If I want to know the nature of a person, I need to observe the behavior of that individual in an environment which is not demanding.
That is not demanding.
That is not
Neutral, yes.
neutral kind of environment, where the signal is not very clear, or even if the signal is clear, you break the demand or you do not meet the demand, there is no repercussion. For example, outside tea, 3:30 or 3 o'clock, whenever the class gets over, you will go for a short tea break. Whether you are introvert or extrovert, more quality data, behavioral data. Behavior is explicit, observable. I am here speaking, standing before you is behavior. What is going on in my mind or what is my nature is not accessible to you. But if you want to make that connection between the behavior and the person, the explicit and the latent person is always latent. Whatever is going on inside your mind is hidden. If I want to make the connection between me and P, I need to look for that E, where the person is more likely to be himself. If I observe the behavior of a person in a meeting, in an office meeting where a CEO or super boss is there, chances are that the data is inactive, and therefore I am not here. So, what I wanted to convey through the first implication, in case this equation is correct, the first implication is that if I want to be successful with my team or subordinates, peers or whatever, I need to understand the people, understand the nature, and in order to do that understanding in a more scientific way, it could be a good idea to look at behaviors which are outside the office. During the tea break or coffee break or whatever, the picnic that you have, let's say suppose we have a picnic, is more correct in terms of giving you behavioral data, whether this person is extrovert or introvert. Otherwise, office or any other situation is very, very demanding, and behavior is typically in response to the demand which is perceived by the individual. So that was the first implication. Now the second one. So let's say, I hope by now, we have spent roughly half an hour using this equation. By now you have not developed any new objection to this equation. Huh? This equation is still acceptable to you, right? Yes, no, maybe, I don't know what you're asking. Okay, so here is one equation, second of an explanation of this. Let's say you observe, a typical individual observes behavior is objective. So you can observe behavior of someone else, let's say your subordinate or peer, and you found that behavior negative. Can you think of an example of a negative behavior? Something that you don't like in others? There could have plenty of things. Huh?
Aggressive behavior.
Huh? Sorry?
Aggressive behavior.
Aggressive behavior. Aggressive or shouting. Aggressive, disobedient, or whatever.
Demeaning others.
Demeaning others, fine. So these are negative behaviors. You don't like it. According to this formula, this aggressive behavior or shouting could be due to the nature of the person, meaning that the person is aggressive, or the person is disobedient, or it could be due to circumstances beyond the control of the person. Now, what do you think typically human beings do? When I look at, let's say, someone who I find doing something wrong, shouting or whatever, generally people connect that behavior with the person or with the E?
With the person.
Person. What is a typical tendency? What is a typical person? A mild example would be someone comes late, then for office, let's say, okay? Then a typical observer is likely to blame the person as he or she is lazy, shirking the work, not very interested, those kind of things, or he or she must have had a traffic jam while coming. What is the typical connection that people make while negative behavior?
First one.
First, typical exceptions are there, Mahabooths are there, but generally when you see someone doing something that you don't like, you think that this person has some problem. Okay? Now suppose if one day you behaved aggressively, or you came late, or you did not obey what your superior wanted you to do, then what do you tell to yourself? That I am a bad person? Or do you now put the onus on E? What do you do?
Onus on E.
Always. So generally, I am not going to go always, but generally suppose if I am late for something, or I did not send you the report which I promised I will send, let's say yesterday, and I was delayed, then I am going to think that, oh okay, I am like alright, but due to family circumstances or my poor health or whatever, right, so because of that I could not do what I wanted to do. Others' negative behavior is equal to them. My negative behavior is roughly equal to E. Now let us look at the positive. There is no green ink here, and use black blue. Suppose if I look at the positive behavior of someone, let's say you have a colleague and he or she was hugely praised by the superior. You are the signature or you are the star of this hospital, you know. Some colleague, not you, someone else was praised, him, positive behavior. Now, do you connect that with the person or do you connect that with the environment?
Environment.
Give me a juicy example of the connection that you make with the environment. Or whether you seem shy, huh? Polish kya hai? Polish kya? Someone said polish. Acha, no. A very oft-repeated thought in the head of people in such a situation is, boss ka kafi maska maarta hai. So you do not really connect that with the individual's competence or merit or hard work or something like this. You connect that with E. And suppose if one day, due to sheer stroke of good luck, boss happened to praise you, then you think that he is going. नहीं, ये आज नहीं डिजर्व किया था, ये 5 साल पहले डिजर्व किया था, ये तो लेट हो गया फिर. Typical human tendency, right? Now, the reason I went to this second institution is that if this is a typical human tendency, then this tendency is likely to be seen in others also. Your subordinates or your peers or your bosses or anyone, customers or patients who come, chances are that if you misbehave with them, they will say, doctor ganda hai. They will not really think that you had a bad day or you have some person in family who is struggling or whatever. So they are likely to blame you for those things. And they would be right because they are typical human beings. They have not done tapasya before coming to your clinic or chamber, and then they would be totally objective in their interpretation. So human beings are very, very weird. In last 2, 3, 4 years, I have started using this fantastic Joomla that this is the most complex CPU that you will ever come across. Okay? So in order to work with people, you have to be at the best of your game. And please combine this with the statement which I made roughly 10-15 minutes back, that after a point, your technical competence or technical skill set or medical skill set matters very, very marginally. Your ability or capability or competence to relate with others, to get the best out of people who are very weird and they are given to all kinds of mistakes. Your competence in getting the best out of those individuals is something which you need to develop. I mean, that's my assumption. Whether this assumption is correct or not, that you only will be able to verify because you know your context much better than I do. So if that assumption is by and large accurate, then we need to be really sharp in understanding and kind of working with people. Any question or doubt or any error that you spotted till this point in time before I go to the second yeah.
So can there be a
Dr. Rupak and then I.
So, you know that reaction of that particular person to the neutral environment is what we should judge. Do you think that getting the information from the neutral environment and from the environment where they are exactly working on, both of them to be analyzed, because you want that person to be fit into the environment where he or she will be working. So if these two are matching, then probably your environment is correct.
You are right. So then I am getting these two ideas. Suppose if I want to hire Dr. Vishwas for some role, okay? Then I need to do these two investigations or two kinds of data collection. One where I figure out whether you are loyal or honest, have high level of integrity, devotion toward those non-technical things which matter. The other is what is the job requirement, organizational culture, the team environment within which I am going to now place you, and see if the person that I detect, the nature that I detect, and the environment which I detect, are they matching with each other? Does that? It seems to make sense to you, right? So that these two parallel things that I do. In fact, you are quite correct in identifying this. Really, really successful organizations, I don't have much idea or any idea in fact of the medical field per se, but a few case studies that I know of companies, commercial sector, commercial organizations, they really make it a point to do both these jobs really, 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 really well. Because if you are an excellent organization, chances are that the technical part is by and large taken care of. You can afford to hire from the best college. You can afford to hire the person who has been trained, let's say, in the best college. That part is taken care of. But the soft aspect of the individual and the soft aspect of the environment, these two should match. If they don't, then you hire the best individual, he or she will leave within a year. Those individuals. So they really go deeper into person and environment fit.
Let her answer that.
Sir, why are we studying organizational behavior? Can there be a conditioning where the people who are working in the organization only come in to do their work and go out? Why is behavior coming into it? You come in to take the lecture, you take the lecture and go out, whether you have health problems. Why can't conditioning be done like that over time? Why do we study? Why does behavior come
Very
into
soon it might turn into a reality if you have a pre-programmed AI robot.
No, for human beings, why is
Human beings, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Unless I
why
plant
can't
a
a
chip
job
in
be
your
a
head.
job and your behavior? Why can't PE completely come down and your environment dictates that only one thing matters is your technical skills?
In a way, your wishlist is already fulfilled. And that will take me to some more negative and sinister and dark side of the organization. I have another Joomla or Fatta which I typically use. Say, it's like this. And again, the 200 or 300 years experience in this room is very, very precious for me to examine this once again, because this audience generally I don't get. Okay, so the idea is that when you look at the newcomer in any organization, person, and make a guess about the motivation level, high, medium, or low. When anyone joins any E, any person joins any E, is he or she typically have a high level of motivation, medium, or low level of motivation? What is your assessment? High, right? After 5 or 10 years of E, if again I take a survey, what do I find? High or medium or low? Medium or low. So in a way, E has already pre-programmed the person. You join a company or a hospital or any organization with high level of motivation. Organizations have this fantastic capability of reducing your motivation in some ways. So in a way, this is happening, but the extreme version of that, where every ounce of the personal factor will be drained out of you, and now you will just become a servant of E. I don't know, maybe after some years. Yeah. Yes, sir, you had something else to ask.
So maybe somehow if you need to fit that employee into that environment, if you think that environment needs to be changed, so how to go about
No,
that?
no, please don't do that. My own understanding is that changing E is a lot more difficult than finding your right E. So let's say the ethical climate or culture is a product of 5, 10 very important people, plus maybe 10, 20, 30 years of history. Systems have been put in place. So I'll take cue from what I mentioned to her, that E is very, very powerful. E subdues the individual. Now, if I want to hire a good P, but he or she is not matching with the E, chances are that the person will, P minus delta P will become after some time. But E will not change. E is very, very tough. In fact, in many sessions on leadership, I almost always try to make it a point for people to consider that your role as the head of the organization is basically to create the right E. Because if you create the right E, the below average P will give you above average B. But if you have a opposite kind of E, then above average P will give you below average.
Sir, in that case,
Him and then
because most of the time in our places, the recruitment process probably is a small interview board or maybe some hours, some minutes. So, how to extrapolate an ideal E in this situation when you recruit these employees?
some investigation needs to be done, some data collection needs to happen. I'll give you one example. Company which is sitting on your mobile right now, Google. In the year 2009 to 12, 3 years. They took 3 years to find the answer to one part of the question, that what are the personal qualities that I need to have in a person. So that examples like Google were on my mind when I said that really excellent organizations, they invest humongous amount of time, because your technical skill by and large is not a differentiator. But the non-technical side is what is going to make a lot of difference. If that is correct, then it behooves, it pays me to go and investigate both these things very, very minutely. Yes, sir.
Is it possible that a few P's, altered P's, change the ideal E?
Then I won't rule that out, but highly unlikely.
A small group changes the environment. Yeah. What is the solution? Change the concept.
No, E. So you are the E for your subordinates, and maybe E in the company or hospital that you are working for is you plus 5, 10 other people who are in important roles. So if now let's say 5, 6 of you collectively align yourself in ensuring some outcome in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, with some pain, some trial and error, you will be able to change that E for better. That can happen. But one lone individual is possible more when you are the head of the organization. Even then it's not that feasible, because generally, I mean, how many people you have seen who have been able to overcome E to suit the E according to their nature.
It has to be together, of course.
So E is not in your control. E is not in your control. That is generally a given to you by your company. So in your case, for example, your superior, the one that you report to, could be EN plus systems and culture, whatever I say. For you to be able to change them in 2 years or 3 years time, I think is very, very difficult. Not impossible. Some people can do that. A lot of stamina and that kind of endurance, but very, very difficult.
I can give you a small lighter example. Say, 5 individuals in the front desk, habitual. One started coming late, and then you see the rest follows suit.
Correct.
5 of them habitually come late. But the environment was the same as before. So now you change those 5 individuals.
No. So I will go through your example in 2 steps. The first one is that initially the E, which is E1 plus B2 plus P5 was healthy, good, positive. And then one P1 or P2, let's say he or she started coming late. Now, generally there is this idea in human psychology that people catch others' negative behaviors very, very fast. Positive behaviors they forget. But if you do something which is funny, then others are likely to pay extra attention to that. We can't help it. That's how we are programmed. So then others will also, okay, so kuch nahi bola, so I will also come late. And then after 6 months you see that the whole thing is gone. So I'll go through your example in these 2 steps. Now, suppose if I have to change that E back to the earlier E. Either I remove all 5 of them or transfer them, or someone above all 5 of them should give them a very stern message that unless you have a good enough reason to be late, here is the penalty. Then see, this is like a parallel of this example is that you are driving without helmet, but then you see the police person who wears a helmet just for those minutes. So the fear of penalty makes people behave in the right manner. Yes, sir.
So, how do we identify these non-technical traits in a person?
There are some psychometric tests. Which I can give you one online example of a test which is very, very useful for extroversion and plus some other things. This is free, by the way. Outofservice.com. In case you have a mobile phone, just type this in your search box and it will remain there. Outofservice.com, big 5, this one. So there are some such tests available for free because some people who are more keen to work scientifically, they have devised these things, and the advantage of this test is it will give you something called ocean profile. In fact, that has been connected very interestingly with leadership, OCEAN. These are 5 personality traits which people generally possess. So, like liquid 5, it will give you a profile of these 5 things. So, it has 62 questions, I believe. 67. 67 questions. Outofservice.com/big5.
So the individual has to take this test, and then only we can analyze how is the individual doing.
That can be a good start. Things are a little more complicated than that. For example, suppose if I am coming to your organization to get hired, my friends have told me that there is a psychometric test, so I am likely to give you distorted responses. But there are ways to correct those. But a good start could be to figure out the individual after having taken care of the technical side. Compromising on the technical side is not an idea. Technical, medical in your case is not an idea. But after having identified that, if you want to know the nature, then one tool available to you is this psychometry.
Thank you.
And again, people fake. People give you distorted responses, but there are ways to correct. Okay. Now let me go to the second part, which is justice. So, I'm starting this by repeating something which I said earlier, that if you look at, let's say, any organization, public, private, NGO, government, and someone is demotivated, someone is not doing what he or she is expected to, internally he or she is not willing to do that, then chances are very, very high that the reason would be that the person feels unfairly treated. I was not justly treated by the organization. Does that sound true? That when a person is unfairly treated, he or she becomes demotivated. Okay. Now there are three forms of justice which are seen, and I'll take you through each of them to illustrate how they matter. The first one is distributive. Distributive justice is that let's say at the end of the performance cycle, generally the cycle is of a year's duration. At the at the end of the cycle, you will see that employees, anyone who is employed is an employee. Employees are given something. Some people are given, let's say, promotion or big bonus or fat check or whatever. Some people are given small amount of bonus or something, and some people are not given anything at all, just the minimum 3% increment or something. Okay. So the distributive justice or distributive fairness concept alludes or connects with this. Suppose if I am getting evaluated at the end of a year with 10 other people, do I find the distribution of those rewards fair or unfair? Now that's a conceptual thing, but more colloquially it will be like, did I get in the distribution, did I get what I thought I deserved? So here some things are to be noted. What I thought I deserved. So generally again, people don't think that they deserve anything less than anyone else. But the question that you will ask, typically you will ask, okay, he was, let's say, given fantastic bonus or promotion or something like that, but she was not given. So in that case, she is going to find the distribution, he will find it fair, the other person is going to find this unfair. Okay. Now, any time the person perceives idiosyncratically, this means that there is no objective basis, maybe she did not work at all, so therefore she deserved to be given nothing. But the individual is not likely to accept that I did not deserve to get anything. So, perceptually, if the person feels that I was not given my fair share, then he or she is going to be demotivated. And the manifestation of that demotivation will be that because of strong E, the individual will do what he or she is told to do, but that work or that behavior would be minimum. The person would do just the minimum so as not to receive any scolding or any firing or any negative penalty from the person. But your total devotion to work will definitely be not there. Because you feel that I was not given my due. Now, I have written them in this particular sequence for a reason, which is that generally what happens that in any organization, when appraisal takes place, we are in the month of March now. So around this time, generally companies or organizations have their appraisal. You will, if you go and take a survey, you will find that 70-80% of the workforce becomes demotivated. Why? Because they start thinking that मेरे को तो नहीं मिला, बगल वाले को मिल गया, मेरे को नहीं मिला. So majority of the workforce starts feeling distributively unfairly treated. Is that correct from your observation also? Now, the next thing is that when Rajiv, let's say, feels that Rajiv was not given what was due to me, but let's say Prashant was given or Bodhibrata was given, I am unhappy, I am demotivated, then I will search for procedural fairness. Then I will search for procedural fairness. which is, I will now try to ask this question, that on what basis it was decided that I will not get something, but X by Z person. So I will go to the process or procedure. There are two components of this procedure which I will do. So, the first one is that the individual has started feeling some kind of grievance, and the person would try to approach someone in the organization to get some redressal of his demands. Okay? Generally, who do you think the person approaches for the redressal?
Immediate superior.
Immediate superior, right? Because go back to what I discussed earlier, 80% of your hospital is equal to your immediate superior. So generally you approach the superior to find a very important answer to you, that why this happened to me. Now, from the non-medical side, the finding is, whether this is true for you or not, you will tell, that 80 to 90%, definitely 80% of such cases when a typical employee approaches the superior to get some kind of clarity, superior either is unwilling to talk, delays, last time here kalana, or let's say after too much of pressure from the subordinate side, in case you end up having some discussion with the person, they will give you some goal answer. Or worse, which is the international justice, they will try to make you the reason behind your this thing. So they will not treat you. Conceptual definition is treatment with dignity. They will not treat you with dignity. They will try to prove to you that, look, you are a hiring mistake, and therefore be thankful to God that your job is there. So that kind of thing is there. What do you think? Is that finding true for organizations in general, which includes medical organizations also, or this is only seen in the commercial side of the organization? Huh? Because human beings are everywhere. Now, I want to spend some time on these two things. Participation I'll come to in after some time. So, now tell me, if I want to, if organization wants to restore the justice perception vis-a-vis distribution, then can organizations do that? What do you think? If you want to restore or bring the balance back vis-a-vis distributive sense. Okay, let me put this in a more colloquial form. Suppose if Rajiv was not promoted, but my colleagues were, and I go to the director with my grievance, then do you think director has the freedom or space available to promote me also?
No.
No. Typically that is not the case, because the overall bouquet of rewards or goodies, they are always limited. You have only a limited number of positions to which you can promote people. The bonus pool, I don't know about the system in corporate healthcare, but in the other part, generally what is decided is something called bonus pool. We made, let's say, 10 crore ka profit, so we will distribute 2 crore as bonus. Now that pool is decided, you can't take it to 2.5 or 3. So within that 2, you have to distribute 2. So restoring the distributive fairness is almost impossible. Sometimes you may be able to do that, but a good theory would be that distributive justice total is given. You cannot change that. But what about this grievance redressal? Suppose if you approach your superior with some problem, do you think he or she can do something vis-a-vis that discussion to try to explain to you why you got less or someone else got more? Huh? Is it possible for a person to do that? Then why do individuals typically don't do that? That's what I think your statement means to me. That everywhere people are there. Suppose if a typical person in the room approaches her superior, मेरे को क्यों नहीं मिला? Superior will basically shun that conversation. भाई आज टाइम नहीं है, कल आना, व्हाट्सएप भेजो, 3 दिन के बाद टाइम देंगे, फिर 14 दिन डांटेंगे, 5वें दिन बोलेंगे नहीं काम करना है, निकल के जाओ. So why do you think they do that?
Lack of training, they don't know that how they're supposed to.
Lack of training, send them to handle.
Yeah. If the supervisor was taught that this is how you're supposed to talk, then they come back.
Okay. Anything else?
If we tell them to come back again and again, maybe they lose the motivation to come and complain, and later on they know that they're not going to accept it even if we say this is the reason.
So basically, they are using some tactics to avoid the conversation, right? Okay.
Probably the role of
Try to do next year.
हाँ वो एक और बहानेबाजी की है इस साल. Yes.
probably the superior can explain to him that what is more expected from him, so that kind of you can avoid the situation as well as you can motivate him or her to go to that goal. But
I
the
don't
risk
know.
is there in next year if you are not, if he or she reaches to that goal, and if you are not giving the adequate jump, then again the superior will be caught.
And now in the last 30-20 minutes of my discussion with you all, and at least for next 10-15 minutes I am going to go into possibly the darkest side of human behavior in organization. There is this research which was done in the year 1987, it was published, so roughly 40 years back. And this research was replicated in the sense that someone conducted the same study in multiple countries, multiple sectors. And there is something very interesting emerged from that study. Tell me if this is something that you have seen happening. Basically, the study found that you are likely to receive the goodies, bonus, promotion, recognition, and all those things that generally an employee wants. Employee is the same person who is employed at any level. Then you have to spend 48.5% of your time not working but networking. Is that correct?
Sorry.
Networking.
Not working but networking.
I think that is correct.
Huh?
Need what?
Just working doesn't really matter. It also matters how you show that you are working. It should be visible.
Presentation.
Results should be visible.
I don't know if results should be visible, but effort must be conveyed.
Yeah.
There is a vast distinction between these two.
That's true.
Is that true from the experience of this audience also?
But the supervisor, for a successful supervisor, he needs to understand whether the person is boasting or just putting in effort, or really the work is being done.
Do you supervise a team, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. Let's say you are here on a Sunday doing this training, right? I am assuming for the sake of discussion for next 5 minutes that you are a complete epitome of conscientiousness and ethical conduct at everything that you do. I'm not joking, I'm going to assume this, right? Now let's say at 2:40, you check your mobile and you get a WhatsApp message that your super boss is going to visit in next 2 hours to your office. Your boss's boss's boss, okay? Someone the most important in the organization. You have 2 people in your team. One who spends 90% of his or her time working, and the other one who is spending 50% of time networking. Okay? You have these 2 people, and one of them you need to choose to spend time with that boss who is coming. Who would you choose?
If the boss is to move around and be shown.
I don't know. You have multiple choice. But यही दो option. Will you choose the hard-working type or will you choose the networking type?
Hardworking.
Others?
Here comes the extrovert person.
Extrovert. वो काम नहीं करेगा. उसका there is a very interesting definition of that networker type.
सर मैं बॉस दोनों को भेज दूँ.
एक कोई भेज सकते हैं।
दूसरे को भेजेंगे तो बॉस आपको वापस भेजेगा. वो जो नेटवर्कर टाइप रहता है ना, वो उसका एक बड़ा बढ़िया डेफिनेशन मेरे को एक पब्लिक सेक्टर वाले पार्टिसिपेंट ने दिया था 2-4 साल पहले कि सर उसका मोटो है, आई एम स्पीकिंग इन हिंदी फॉर अ मिनट बिकॉज दिस पर्सन सेड इन हिंदी एंड आई फाइंड इट वेरी इम्पैक्टफुल. काम मत कर, काम का फिक्र कर और फिक्र का सही जगह पर जिक्र कर. I don't know if you have seen this happening. Always. Now, this is something why I said that I am going into the darker and sinister side, because imagine if I have some problem or my mother has some problem, I approach one of your hospitals. You are the person who is looking at me and you have gone through all this. Can I expect the best output from you? You would be really a combination of Mahatma Buddha and Mahavir if you give me your best thoughtful output. Humanly it's not possible. Very, very difficult, right? So organizations matter in that sense. By the way, so one reason this grievance reversal doesn't take place, because if that finding is correct that generally you promote those guys that you like. Okay, and you like people for not their curricular but extracurricular activities. So then chances are that you will not be able to explain this when you come to the grievance reversal. आप कैसे बोलेंगे कि I promoted this guy or gave bigger bonus to that person because he or she was from the same college, from the same zone, same region and everything, and we had chai, coffee and sutta break together. You can't really articulate these rationale to anyone. So therefore this becomes very, very difficult. And therefore, in case time permits, I was thinking of talking about listening, but let's see if we reach it. Now the third one, interactional. Is that expensive? Interactional is that if I receive the message from my subordinate that, okay, I want to have a discussion about something, I know what he or she wants to talk about, okay? Then at least treat this person with dignity, ask him or her to come whenever you are free, and then offer him chai, coffee. At least listen to the person's grievances. Well, does that cost you something? Or any boss, does that cost you something? Not really, right? So distributive cannot be restored. Procedural becomes very, very difficult, and there is no excuse for this. Everyone has done this part of MBA where they know that people don't leave organizations, they leave bad bosses. Here is the bad boss walking, talking and living, who did not give you what you thought you deserved, who was not willing to talk to you about what you deserved, and who treated you shabbily. Now tell me, what reason do you have to continue working in any place that's so? Unless you are having a lot of strong E, your spouse is working in the same place, your child is going to a good school, there is a ठीक है चलो, 1 more year, 2 more years. So this is what leads to that kind of outcome. Now, what are your questions at this point in time before I see if I have time to the next one?
So again to you, the same situation, like suppose if you are the boss and you have seen 3 employees and you have the 2 posts. You have the 2 posts to promotion. So you have promoted 2, and the third one, they have done equally, good job. And the third person has come to you and asked you politely, sir, why I have not been promoted. So what will be your reaction and how will you handle that situation?
What I will do is to listen to that person's grievances in a very, very careful way. And my working hypothesis here is that if I listen well to what this person has to say, 50% of the grievance will melt away.
Interaction.
Yes, so one component of interactional where I am turning out to be a person who understood. You mentioned the word understanding vis-a-vis the subordinate. That's a big, big, big bucket, but within that, the problem of the subordinate. So if I listen carefully, there's a good chance that I will be able to convince is a bad word. There will be a good chance that the person will leave the discussion with some degree of peace of mind.
What are your last thoughts of that skill of listening that is also included in that?
Yes. That's what I said.
So if you did not get the award and your 2 colleagues got the award, you got demotivated. But if all 3 of your colleagues got the same award, will those 2 get demotivated?
Human beings are very weird.
His demotivation will be more. Then let's
No,
give.
no, no, no. Then the
rewards.
question will be those two duffers, they were hardly to be seen in the office. I was the one who was manning the office from, let's say, human resource wise, from morning to evening. But they got the same thing. People always compare.
So you can never make them happy.
So distributive can never be perfect. Because people have this inflated sense of what they do.
Are there scientific ways to do that?
Scientific ways to do what?
Assessing the metrics and
There is one particular concept called equity entitlement. Equity is equity justice. So there is some category of people who are equity entitled. So you can find out if someone is going to be of that type, who will always have this grievance कि मेरे को जितना चाहिए था नहीं मिला लाइफ में, or at least company में नहीं मिला. So that is very common in that. You want to avoid that because pleasing him or her is impossible.
Sir, how important is listening and what should be the ratio between speaking and listening?
If you are a boss, then maybe 80 listening, 20 speaking. But do you find that meritorious as an idea? Huh? But generally the bosses are extroverts, so they speak 80 and listen 20. Or listen only 10 maybe.
90.
What is your opinion about just in general self-appraisal of the employee?
Self-appraisal meaning?
Means
How to-
how to, I mean, that situation initially what you have given, like at the time of, instead of assessing them or self-appraisal or a cross-appraisal. So, like if me and he is working at the same level or at same capacity, then probably he will do appraisal for me and I will do appraisal for him.
Not that peer appraisal.
Yeah. And the self-appraisal, he will do it for himself. How good he is at his work, what he thinks.
I think that can be a system put in place after a few years of making the HR more scientific. Because if you do that in the beginning itself, then from prior data, when people do this peer-to-peer rating, suppose if I give you a problem, you are taken through 360-degree rating, meaning that your subordinates rate you, let's say your patients rate you, your peers rate you, your bosses also rate you, your boss and maybe boss's colleague also rates you. I compute the average of each quarter, so superior quarter, peer quarter and subordinate quarter, your rating. Huh? Intuitively, what do you think? Which quarter will rate you the lowest? Subordinate or peer or boss?
Yeah.
Peer. Peer rating is generally very violent. Bosses may be a little, by the way, in fact, I have been kind of brushing or painting bosses with bad color. Bosses are very protective at times, but that's for some other discussion. So bosses may be a bit kind. Subordinates may also think, ठीक है, boss ने कभी तो अच्छा बोला था तो थोड़ा अच्छा rating दे देते हैं. But peers are not going to forget any bad thing that you did to them.
Actually, both of them are actually competing for the same post.
That's also one thing. That's also one. Sorry, sir, you were asking something.
What should be the ratio between
Acha, listening hard.
Don't speak at all.
But sir, that was also doctor. Only listening could solve the, don't make a sad employee happy.
You're right. You're right. But in the absence of that, the sad employee is going to become mad.
We should show empathy and we can show that I understand the situation, but we can change it gradually and we can give some comforting words that.
He should be amicable.
Huh?
He should be amicable.
I do
The
that.
boss should be amicable. The boss should be. This is what you're saying, right?
So regarding our profession, what is the importance of an appraisal from a patient? Or if they are
And the feedback.
Feedback.
I think. No,
What's your
I'm thinking aloud here, and now that we have 10 minutes, or at least 5 minutes, I'll spend on 2 techniques of listening. But for 5 minutes, I can discuss things with you. So I'm thinking aloud. I have not thought about this very, very carefully, or at all, in fact. But let's say, suppose if I have to look at the technical versus non-technical. So for the non-technical, it might be a good idea to get your rating from patients. The attitude, by listening patiently, treating your patients with dignity and care. Some small thing, let's say someone happened to call you whether you responded to that person in a more dignified manner, vis-a-vis, let's say, treating him or brusquely. So those things can be quite useful. But technically, I will not know whether your, whatever, let's say, lens that you put in my eye during this surgery, this was the best lens or not, that I cannot opine on. But non-technical, we have tried.
It is possible only for the front desk and others. Not the.
No, his question was for doctors, I believe.
Yes, yes.
That is not very feasible.
So again, I'm thinking aloud.
That's a-
Our industry has become a more of a.
That is a Google review.
Google is always there.
Google is a
Paid review, it can be a paid review.
That is social studies.
Google review is an amalgamation of 5 things. But see, I want to bounce this off from you that let's say there are 2 doctors that are equally competent. 2 doctors equally competent in terms of technical domain expertise, equally competent, equally experienced. One doctor, when the patient comes, he or she listens to the patient more carefully, and there are particularly 2 techniques which I want to talk about. If you give the proof, you have looked at the diagnostic report, you have heard the patient, and the patient goes in that conversation, goes with the impression that the doctor listened to my problem carefully. You give exactly the same medicine ABC. The other doctor gives exactly the same medicine ABC, equally competent doctors, right? But does not listen. What do you think? Which of these 2 doctors will be more successful with the patient?
We're giving more chair time. We call it chair time.
Why?
Good listener.
Good listener. What is the impact of that on the other side?
The patient usually makes a questionnaire. What I will ask the doctor. The doctor may have understood it is the first question, but you will keep on asking all the 10 questions that you have made in his question. So if you listen, doctor is a good doctor in India.
And
The
is it
other aspect is that even if it is not a patient also, it is listening to that person or a chairperson, it giving an importance to that particular person on the opposite side of the table. So
whenever I pose this question to a non-medical audience, 99% of the time they say, sir, the doctor which was listening, according to us, we will repeat that doctor. And the medicine of that doctor will also work better. I don't know how that happens. So if you get this impression that the other person has understood the ailment,
So there is a proverb, patient से आपसे मिलके आधी बीमारी दूर हो जाती है.
नहीं, एक तो मिलने का है, लेकिन मिलने के बाद जो बातचीत होती है ना, वो बातचीत का एक तरीका है जिसमें कि आप ये प्रूफ देते हैं कि मैं आपके साथ हूँ, तो वही दवा शायद ज़्यादा असर करेगी. और आप लगेगा कि यू आर अ डिस्टेंट क्लोज पर्सन, देन लगेगा हाँ ठीक है दवाई तो दे दी लेकिन पता नहीं समझा.
They have some comfort zone.
हाँ. So okay. So again, this last thing about this.
So this participation in the residual part.
This I did not know. No, basically the idea here is that one way you can reduce the procedural injustice is to make that person participate in the process which the reward was distributed. So for example, suppose if you are the subordinate, I give you self-rating, how well you do on 10 parameters, and then boss's rating, combine both of them, then the grievance of the procedure would be less. Okay, so there are 5 ways in which people typically listen when someone else comes with a problem. I'm going to write all those 5 ways and talk about 2 of them. So here the person who is to be referred to is Carl Rogers. So very quickly I'll try to illustrate these 5 points and then talk about 2 of them in some detail. Suppose if a student comes to me, I'm taking an example of a conversation between a student and me here in IIM Calcutta. If a student comes to me and tells me a problem, the problem is that, sir, I don't know whether I will be able to get good placement or not. Generally, when people enroll for a MBA program, one of the key objectives that they have is to get a good job. So suppose if a person comes and gives me this problem, I can listen to the problem of the person in these 5 ways. There are some 6 or 7 ways also, but 80% of the time, according to the data of Carl Rogers, listening happens in these 5 ways. So I can judge the person, which is evaluate. So my internal dialogue would be, अगर तुम्हें प्लेसमेंट में दिक्कत लग रही है तो कौन जिम्मेदार है? 2 साल पढ़ाई क्यों नहीं निकाला, क्यों मारा? Right? So that will be evaluated. So basically, I am blaming the individual for the problem that he or she is describing. The second is interpreting. In interpreting, basically what I do is to start giving ज्ञान. पहली नौकरी में क्या रखा है? करियर 30 साल की होती है. So you can see that these 2 are not going to be very effective. In fact, this is in the increasing order of goodness, listening. So when I give Gyan, after 5 minutes, this person will say, "ठीक है, मेरे को इतना ज्ञान already है, I don't want it." And most likely you can identify your bosses in one of these categories. My hunch is that if you have a Gyani boss who always gives you philosophy of every religion and country, you don't want to talk to him or her. The third is supportive, where basically I offer him some medicine or her some medicine. So I can tell, okay, fine, you're not very sure about the job that you're going to get. Which sector do you want to go to? Sir, marketing or finance or operations? Achha, okay, then prepare your CV accordingly. Go to that club, spend 2 minutes or 2 months on this project, then this company will most likely look at it. So I am offering some suggestion. Fourth way in which I can listen to the person is to become curious about the individual. Probe, ask questions. Oh, okay, which companies have you thought about? Why do you think that this company is not going to pick you up? Or in what way this sector suits you, marketing or finance or something like that? Asking questions. Generally, this has a better result. And the last is understanding. When I listen with understanding, I'll try to demonstrate that here. I do 3 things. One is to capture what the person is saying in its totality. Number 2, I paraphrase or reword this. And number 3, I confirm from the person that is this what you wanted to say. Now, my whole very brief, this is really the capsule version of listening. Idea is that when you will listen with more probing and understanding, the impact on the other side is almost always above average. When you listen with these 3, first 3, the impact is amazing. As I told you, E is the worst, I is slightly better, S is better than that, P is better than that, and P and U are generally the best. When you listen with probing and understanding, the impact is better. Okay, now, what do you have to say? Questions, comments? Sorry?
Increase the salary.
It doesn't work always.
See, I won't say it doesn't work at all, in the sense that I work for money, so I can't say that.
Always. One part.
Give them a purpose. A purpose which they know they will be able to fulfill only while working with you or with your organization. Ensure the minimum hygiene level of salary so that he or she doesn't crave about it. But I'll tell you something which is very interesting. When people crib about salary, my suspicion, and this is not only my suspicion from data also, basically what they are cribbing about is lack of distributive justice. This is not about salary that I am getting, this is about the salary that I am getting vis-a-vis others. That way, the Elon Musk is also making money, so I don't care.
Study concluded, he won more than my friend.
More than my
Colleague.
So,
Just 1 rupee more than my colleague makes me happy. It's a study in England. It's a great test. Because there is no amount as mentioned. If there is only slight amount more than your friend makes you more in the same order.
I can see huge number of people filling in that category.
That's what it's a study.
But I want to repeat this, that really talented people, they get energy when they work for a purpose which is bigger than their immediate monetary or some such. And by the way, again, the Google study which I referred to, this was I think skill number 5th or 6th, first one something else. And it was surprisingly found in that study that many managers, many people who are the E, they do not spend any time telling their subordinates that this is the purpose for which I am asking you to do this. They just tell you, do this. But why, how this connects with the larger vision or mission of the organization, they don't spend it. So this is costless. Having a 30-minute discussion with your team that this is the purpose for which we have opened this hospital is not a very expensive item. 3 o'clock done. Chaliye, धन्यवाद.